everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week and this month because we are going to be talking not just about the astro weather for the next week, but also for the month of December. I'm going to be talking about the bigger energies and what's at play generally for everyone and the collective. And to be honest with you, this video in itself is going to be, I think, a really great example of just how all over the place the energies are going to be in December. So don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you. But this video is a bit of a triple threat because we need to talk about the astrology for obviously December the 1st through the 8th. We also want to talk about what's happening in December, and we have a Mercury Cazimi taking place this week. So I think that's kind of like the big news, to be honest with you guys. But yeah, you're going to get a little bit of everything in this video. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you guys like my work, you want to see more of my videos, I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using Western astrology and tarot to try to make sense with what is going on in the cosmos. Please do leave me your comments below and let me know how you're feeling with the energies this week. Tell me what mutable madness situations are happening for you. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you like this video, consider sharing, and yes, subscribe. All right, so happy post-Thanksgiving to those of you guys in the States who are celebrating. If you guys are watching this, I'm sure you're still, you're either wiped out from shopping or maybe you're still trying to knock things off of your list. I just want to remind you guys that we have the sale on my website going on through Monday. We have all kinds of new offerings. We've got new bags and mugs and all kinds of astrology gear, as well as lots of discounts on products like calendars, personal transit calendars for your phone, as well as our printed calendars and all of my courses. So if you guys want to check that out, head over to my website. We have lots of goodies there. Equally, we are doing a early bird sale for my New Year's Day presentation every January 1st. We hang out for a couple hours and I talk to you guys about the astrology for the next year. We're offering a 20% off discount for that. So if you want something fun to do on New Year's Day, come hang out with us. I am also offering a new service. So this is something that I'm only going to have on my website until the end of the year. I have created time for about 12 kind of private recorded sessions. I'm going to be offering this 12-month horoscope reading where I go in depth. I'm going to talk to you guys about what is happening pretty much every month for the next year. I'm basing everything off of your personal horoscope, and I'm going to talk to you about major planets changing signs, like Saturn and Neptune going into Aries, Uranus going into Gemini, Jupiter going into Cancer, new nodal shifts into Virgo and Pisces, and the eclipses, as well as what's happening with your chart ruler. I take a look at your progressions, your solar return, and also your annual perfections, and give you the best times to do things. So it's going to be things like me recommending when to focus on your health, when would be a good time for travel, when you're going to see some work or love or relationship opportunities. It is definitely the most in-depth reading that I have ever done. We do cover some of these in a general reading, but usually not in this capacity where I'm kind of talking to you and helping you game plan your entire month. So if you want the benefit of being able to have me help you plan your year ahead, I'd love to help you make 2025 your most successful year yet. Check out my website for this service and all the other products that we're offering and the savings for the sale at beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, as another heads up, we have December horoscopes that are out. So some of these aspects I do cover in the December horoscopes, but that's more personalized for your sun, moon, or rising sign. So do check that out if you guys want to see what's going on for the month ahead. And I show you your rising sign and some of these transits in action. And I've got a lot of people who have been asking me to do 2025 horoscope readings. That's just kind of general readings for the year. So would you guys like that? Let me know. I would consider doing that. I am kind of going into like cruise control right now. Like if you guys have seen my natal chart, like all of my planets are at the bottom part of my chart in Scorpio and Capricorn. So I feel like the bulk of my work in the year is pretty much like August through December. And then once I get to December, I reward myself every year and I take like a month off and I don't see clients, I don't do work, I don't do anything other than create content. So I'm coming into that time of year right when I hit mid-December. I'm chilling until the new year. So yeah, if you guys want me to create some content like that, let me know. I'd love to hear some of your recommendations. I'd consider doing it. Yeah, I know some other astrologers are doing it too, so I don't have a problem doing it. I just don't know how long that they would be. All right, so with that being said, let's talk this week, and then we're going to get into me talking to you guys about the transits that we're going to take a look at through December after we get this week knocked out. If you guys are watching this on Sunday, then you're watching this on December 1st, so you get the monthly right when the month starts. Let's talk this week. All right, so I'm gonna be honest with you guys. In a nutshell, I feel like December is a lot more chill than other previous months that we have had. Okay, so now we're kind of getting out of that eclipse energy. Obviously, Sagittarius season, we are gonna see some planets go through Sagittarius, which will square the September Pisces eclipse point that we had. So we're gonna feel a little bit of pressure from that, but then it's gonna kind of calm down. What really piques my attention is like the first week of December. Primarily, it kind of starts up around the 4th and it goes through like the 7th, maybe the 8th, that we see an insane amount of planetary action in 1 week. Okay, so for me, my eyes got kind of big looking at this week being like, wow, there's a lot of stuff happening. And a lot of reoccurring transits that are happening because we are also seeing Mercury retrograde. So a lot of the aspects that are being made, it's kind of covering territory of things that have happened in the pre-shadow of the Mercury retrograde before Mercury went retrograde. So you're going to see all of that stuff. For me, I think about all of the squares taking place between planets in Sagittarius, which is kind of like optimistic, the bigger picture. It's kind of like what we're learning and what we're believing in, coming into opposition with Jupiter in Gemini. So you guys have heard me talk about the mutual reception between these two, which generally, mutual reception is a good thing, but when both planets are debilitated and they're retrograde, to me, it feels like they're not speaking the same language. So it makes things feel more confusing. It makes things feel more challenging. It also feels like we're having to kind of take a wait and see kind of method to some of the stuff that's going on this week. There could very well be some very big news or some things that are coming out in the world that are blown out of proportion. That's generally what we see with Jupiter energy, or when we see retrogrades in Sagittarius. It's like stories might be, embellished in some way. We may see some tall tales. There can definitely be a sense of things feeling very dramatic, especially when it comes to, Sagittarius and Gemini related things. So this could be travel related. This could be weather related. This could be involving big stories with the courts, big themes revolving around education, big themes revolving around travel. So all of these things, because we've got both Jupiter and Mercury retrograde in these signs, are being worked out. We're seeing some kinks worked out, basically. Jupiter will be retrograde till February. We're going to see Mercury go direct in mid-December. But we will be in the Mercury shadow until the new year. So just expect the Sagittarius area of your horoscope quite literally to be under, it's kind of under construction until we get to the new year. All of these planets are also simultaneously coming into a square with Saturn. So we'll see like the Sun square Saturn, we'll see Mercury square Saturn. Again, this is the second time now that it's retrograde, and we are going to see Jupiter square Saturn in December at the end of the month. And that will also be the second time that this has happened. So it's a little bit of a different twist where, oppositions can be a bit of like a ping pong where we're going back and forth and we're trying to kind of work out some of the miscommunications, misunderstandings, change in direction with the retrograde. But it's forming a T-square to Saturn, which is now direct in Pisces. So it means that Saturn is kind of like the stickler right now between these two particular squares. And I will say, to Saturn's credit, Saturn direct in Pisces now is saying, make it make sense, make it real, right? It can't be a fabrication. It can't be a pipe dream. If we're actually going to say that we're going to do something, if we're going to make a change, if we're going to go somewhere, if we're finally going to learn something, if we're going to kind of step up, we need to make sure that we are being honest. We need to make sure that it's in alignment with our kind of higher self. We need to have a vision for the plan, and it can't be just, like I said, like a pipe dream. So Saturn is holding both Jupiter as well as, Mercury and planets going through Sagittarius accountable for, don't just make it sound good, actually do it. And rather than kind of blowing smoke up people's asses, it's just like, have a plan, have a vision. So my perspective is that, it would have just been the Mercury retrograde in Sag that would have thrown some people for a loop, because Mercury does not do well in that sign. It's not detail oriented. But that factored in with some squares to Saturn and an opposition to Jupiter. I look at this and I'm like, man, the first 10 days of December, whatever is happening in my life or whatever is happening in the world, I'm going to be like, I'm not going to freak out about it. There's obviously some things that are kind of rearranging and kind of changing, and it's being brought on by Saturn. And do not sleep on where Saturn is in your chart right now. So even though the reorganization or maybe the slowing down in Sagittarius is happening, it's happening primarily because of the square to Saturn. It wants to make sure that you're kind of doing things correctly or on time, or you've got a system. It's the opposition to Jupiter that makes it feel all that much bigger. Mercury retrograde, right? Like, yes, we see cars break down. We see, emails that go missing or haywire. We respond to the wrong people. There can be slowing down that can kind of happen with travel or learning. Quite literally, some of these things are already happening. So like, I put out my products for the fall or the winter, where I have a calendar company that prints my calendars. And, as of right now, they only sell the printed versions to the United States and Canada. Wake up this morning, my husband tells me, hey, we got an email. It came in from the company that does the printing. It turns out that the post office in Canada is striking. So that can impact, how we're actually being able to get our printed items to our Canadian subscribers, right? Quite literal to the astrology, right? Mercury does generally connect to Gemini, so it can be about post, mail, email, packages, things like that. And it's in its fall in Sagittarius, so it's literally going through a sign that's about something that's further away, or something that is kind of going on that is a moral or a legal reorganization revolving around importing and exporting, shipping and receiving, and mail. And it's coming into a square with Saturn, which I think could literally represent the strike that's like, hold on a second, we're about to see stuff that's going to get delayed or set back. That's literally dealing with foreign countries. So for me, it's quite literal. So we may see, okay, we're in the midst of holiday season and there's packages that are being delayed, or they're missing, or we can't find tracking, or there's issues with flights changing or delays with going places. I have had all of these things happen. I have gifts that I had sent out for people in November, could not find tracking numbers. Suddenly then they appear 3 weeks later. I've got the calendar thing going on. I've had some mix-ups with travel. Travel was fine, but I've definitely had some mix-ups with rescheduling travel already. And I was traveling for the holiday, and this is not funny, but I'll tell you guys, I talked about it on my live. I was traveling for the holiday, and Mercury was retrograde in my third house. So it was about a road trip and being somewhere. And when Mercury was going retrograde and it was coming into the square with Neptune in my sixth and Pisces and Saturn, I got a phone call from my dog nanny who was watching my dog while I was out of town. I have a dog that has really bad anxiety. And so we sent him with like CBD dog chews, because I have a French bulldog and he gets so hyperventilated, excited in the car, that by the time we get him to the woman's house who watches him with the other dogs, and then he runs around with other dogs, he literally can't breathe because he's like so excited. So we give him a little bit of like a happy treat to calm him down. And I left her with the bag. And I remember leaving and like saying to my husband, I was like, is this a good idea to leave this bag here? And he's like, yeah, I think it's fine. And I could tell that like, he seemed fine with it, but I was just kind of like at the moment being like, I wonder if this is a bad idea. Anyway, 2 days into the trip, dog nanny calls me. She's like, can I talk to you? I'm like, oh my God, something's wrong with my dog. I'm thinking Mercury square Saturn and Neptune. What's wrong with him? Did he get out? Is he missing? That was my worst case scenario. Come to find out, she left the CBD dog treats on the counter, and 2 golden doodles scaled the counter in the kitchen, got the bag, opened the bag up, ate the entire bag of treats. And so she calls me and she's like, hey, these dogs ate these treats. I'm trying to do the math in my head and the calculations. She goes, how many treats did you give him? I'm like, maybe 5. It was like a new bag. I'm like, how many are in the bag? And she's like, 180. And I was like, oh my God. There was dead silence on the other side of the phone. And I was like, there couldn't have been that many in there. I'm like talking to her. She's freaking out. She's stressed out trying to do the calculations. And I'm like, okay, let me go and look, Google the bag. Come to find out there was 30 treats in the bag. So there's only 25. Anyway, without going too far into details, the dogs are fine. They were just on a good trip, probably for the evening, but they were fine. But it was the epitome of like, Mercury retrograde in my third, miscommunication, misunderstandings, traveling, there being issues with pets, right? Square to Saturn and Neptune. And Neptune ended up being the drugs. It didn't end up being the dog went missing. Thank God. So my point is that even someone like me who knows that this energy is in the skies, it's getting me. So for you guys, being astrologically kind of aware of the energies in the skies right now and knowing that mutable signs create change, there can be changes of circumstances, changes with travel, changes with weather. And then we throw a Mercury and Jupiter retrograde in the mix to that. And it's just like, my God, there can just be some really outlandish conversations and information and ideas and not being able to relate to, people very well. We have also got, we've got Neptune that's about to go direct this week. So Neptune, as a planet, an outer planet, as it's turning direct, it's going to take some time to wake up. So I kind of see like even with Neptune going direct, and that's supposed to kind of help the fog clear, there is this sense of still feeling like half asleep and not really knowing quite clearly what's kind of getting woken up or kind of becoming more clear in the Pisces area of your chart. We have got then retrogrades happening. So, Mercury at the start of the week is already retrograde, but you are going to see also Mars turning retrograde this week. I just put out a video on that. So if you guys have been following, I did a video of Mars in Cancer, and then I did Mars in Leo, and I just did Mars retrograde. I will do another Mars retrograde video once it's back in Cancer. But right now, just know that for the next month, Mars is turning retrograde in Leo. So it'll spend a whole month in Leo. I think Mars is better in this sign personally. I think that this is about reconnecting to our inner child, our inner creative, our inner artist, our inner romantic. It is giving us an extended period of time to rethink and rework something in the Leo area of our chart. Remember, it's going back to Cancer next month, and it's going to then spend almost 2 months in Cancer. So think of it as you leave your house, you have to go to the house, you have to go to the store across town, you get all the way over there, and then you realize you don't have your debit card. And no, you can't use Apple Pay. So what do you have to do? You have to get in your car, go back home, get your purse, so that way you can go and complete your tasks for the day. So obviously something is slowing down in the Leo area of our chart where there has been more action and boldness and kind of more of like a dynamic energy, maybe drama for some people. And it's heading back into Cancer. So it's saying before we take some actions revolving around our heart space, our relationships, creative projects, children, we have to make a change on the home front or emotionally, or we have to take some kind of action revolving around clearing up the past. So you, for right now, just want to focus on where Leo is. That's where there's going to be some action. But guys, I mean, my goodness, Mars retrograde, which rules the North Node. So when it comes to our own personal action and kind of like, goals or our joy, like we're having to rethink something. We're having to create space. Mercury retrograde, changes in circumstances revolving around business, travel, communications, that kind of a breakdown. Jupiter is still retrograde. Uranus is retrograde. It's almost like 2024 is kind of finishing up with like a big like reevaluation, right? How is this year gone? Where have we been? What did we learn? This is not really a time where there's a lot of forward motion, right? So give yourself the time to let things really kind of wind down this month. I feel like, between the oppositions to Jupiter and the squares to Saturn, for me, it has felt very much like being at a crossroads where, things are going to go one of two ways. It's either going to get blown out of proportion with the oppositions to Jupiter and create some challenges in communication, or with the squares to Saturn, there's this feeling of, maybe being overly cautious or unsure or keeping quiet or not taking some action. And it almost seems like it's really hard to find the middle ground, which I think, you see that a lot with Jupiter oppositions. It's like all or nothing, And so really what it's saying is that it's teaching us that we don't have to kind of go, not everything has to be black and white. For some of us, it's like, feast or famine. Oppositions to Jupiter could be overindulging, overspending, over-traveling, overwhelmed. And the squares to Saturn is kind of like saying like nothing, slowing down, cautious, like what have you. So for me, I think finding the middle ground is that Saturn in Pisces is like taking time to sit and reflect with things, taking time to rest, taking time to allow things to just settle, like let the dust settle the first week or so of December. whatever big things are happening or whatever big things are changing in your life or in the world around you, like let's take a little bit of time for this to settle in and make sure that it's not just stuff that's being blown out of proportion that seems like, you know, it's too hard to believe, because I think we're still waiting for a lot of these retrogrades to shake out. And I'll believe a lot more of what's kind of going on in the world as we get closer to January, when we're coming out of the Mercury shadow. It's a mutable mess. And even though, you know, I said December is pretty calm, it is a lot more relaxed than the other months. A bulk of this energy you're actually going to see the first 10 days of December. So you're going to be feeling this in the immediate next week. But yeah, I think all things considered, December is an easier month. We are going to be seeing a new moon that's taking place in Sagittarius. So if you guys didn't catch that video, check it out. It's at a 9, so it's like a double dose of Sag energy. And it also features oppositions to Jupiter, where it could be big ideas. It features a trine to the North Node, which can be very much kind of like getting up, getting going. There's actually a fire trine between the North Node as well as Mars in Leo. And we also see a square to Saturn. So it's just kind of like, once again, do we get up and go, or do we kind of pace ourselves and take our time? It's not a really significant moon. And we'll see some other lunations that are going to be kind of taking place later in the month as well. And we'll talk about that as we kind of get into the monthlies, because there's going to be the new moon is actually taking place, depending on when you guys are watching this. It took place like last night going into like this morning, very early this morning on the 1st. So for some people in some time zones, it was on the 30th. For others, it's taken place just a couple hours earlier today on the 1st. And then we'll have 2 other lunations. So if you want to get technical, there's actually 2 new moons in the month of December, both the new moon in Sag and the new moon in Capricorn. And then we'll also have a full moon in Gemini. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the week ahead. We're going to start with obviously December 1st, Sunday, and we're going to go through the 8th. So if you guys are watching on the 1st, happy Sunday. I hope you guys are well. A big hello to my Sunday crew. Hope you guys are comfy, having something nice to drink, staying warm, and getting ready. Get your calendars out and get your pens out, okay? Because we're going to be taking a lot of notes. And I'll put this also in the description below, so that way you guys can reference this as well. All right, so we're waking up this morning, and if you didn't already do it earlier this morning or last night, this is the time basically for the new moon. So we saw a new moon just hours earlier in Sagittarius. So you can do your new moon ritual stuff today if you want. Like I said, that new moon is colorful because the positives is the trine of the North Node, helps us focus on our own personal growth. We also have a trine to Mars, so work with fire, set intentions, write your intentions, burn them, light a candle, get moving, right? These are things that you want to do with this new moon. Where it's challenging is it's opposing Jupiter, so it does mean that it can feel like we're kind of dreaming big and we're wanting to accomplish big things. But it's also squaring Saturn, so it does mean that it's gonna take more than just big ideas and dreams and pretty words to kind of make this thing happen. If you guys remember, I also said to you that this month Mercury would be retrograde over the new moon degree. So another option is you can actually set your intentions, write out everything that you want in terms of your new intentions, depending on which house the new moon is in. Check out that video that I put out if you guys want to know where. And I would use the first 2 weeks of December to reevaluate, rework, right? And keep going back and forth with the intentions that you're writing. And then right around the time Mercury goes direct, it'll be coming back into conjunction with the new moon degrees. You can actually set your intentions closer to the 3rd week of December. Once you've given yourself time to kind of reflect, and that really is what Saturn is about, on some of these goals, and make sure that you can make it happen, that you've got the time for it, that you've got the capability of being able to swing it. I think that's what I'm going to do personally, because I feel like we need a little bit more time to kind of work some of this stuff out. We will also be seeing a moon coming into a square with Saturn pretty much first thing in the morning. So if you're an early person, you're not feeling probably too friendly this morning, moon square Saturn is like not wanting or knowing how to emotionally relate, and that there's kind of some delay or some blockage or some kind of breakdown. And we've also got the moon then coming into an opposition with Jupiter, which can make us very emotionally stimulated. It can cause big emotional reactions and feelings. So what you're going to see is first the square happens to Saturn. So that's around an hour ago. Now it's coming into an opposition with Jupiter, which can make, feelings and emotions feel bigger. That's going to be in the afternoon hour. And then you're going to see the moon come into conjunction with Mercury at a 19. I feel like this evening with the moon Mercury, and Mercury is retrograde, we're pausing and reflecting and re-evaluating or returning to conversations that we have had. Emotionally, we want to, learn, travel, expand, share, be positive, be optimistic. And it almost looks like by taking time today to really think things through or come up with an action plan before we approach other people or book travel or make any big decisions, like it's going to serve us well. I also like that the moon Mercury is saying we can talk more about our feelings, or now we're ready to kind of rehash situations. And there is a trine to Chiron, which can help us heal. So actually, like Sunday night is a good night. Like if there's been some conflict or some friction, or if there's been some issues or some problems, whether you sit down and talk to somebody, you call somebody back, you send them a message and let them know you want to talk, maybe you apologize, you smooth something over. This can be a really great aspect this evening to be able to get closure or better relate or better understand others, maybe even forgive others. If that's something that you guys are kind of processing and dealing with potentially. Then we're going to see, with Mercury coming into conjunction with Moon, we're more capable of being able to express our emotions and put them into words and like share with other people where we've been hurt or what we need, or, be reflecting on something, and like we can reconnect in like a deeper way. And obviously, Jupiter is the dispositor of all these planets in Sag, and Jupiter is in opposition, and it's also retrograde. So we might be returning to things we've written, said, spoke about, maybe things we've been thinking about that we're now kind of ready to kind of share with others. So there's a lot of opportunity for healing basically all evening. This is now going to take us into the 2nd. So this will be Tuesday. And when you guys wake up in the morning, that moon is still in Sagittarius. Be mindful of visibility issues. Be mindful of travel delays, especially pertaining to weather. That moon is now squaring Neptune. So this could be issues with water, issues with ice, issues with snow, issues with, traveling overseas. Something about Sagittarius and the Mercury retrograde and having Mercury debilitated, and then also seeing some of the squares, really makes me feel like weather is going to have a huge impact on traveling. Okay, so this would be one of the days where that could potentially come up. But on an emotional level, with the moon square Neptune, we feel emotionally unsure or confused or not ready to talk about something or connect yet. There is also this sensitivity or kind of softening. So we might feel like we're a little bit more likely to absorb other people's stuff, or a little bit more emotionally kind of either in tune or a little bit more touchy than usual on the morning on, this is Monday. I think I said Tuesday. This is Monday. So we're a little sensitive there. There could also be a tendency for some people to be drowsy or sleepy with the moon square Neptune. So make sure you're not hitting snooze. Make sure you have your alarm set if you have somewhere that you have to be on Monday. Then we're going to see, after the square, the moon is going to move into Capricorn. So this is a very different vibe, and this is kind of like in the afternoon. Moon in Capricorn is going to shift from that more Jupiterian travel, learning energy, to more about work, business, responsibility, long-term goals, okay? So that'll be in the PM hours. So you guys might get a little bit more work done later in the day, or you might be reserving, later in the day for meetings or things that are going to be a little bit more grounded. Obviously, Saturn is associated with the moon, and when the moon's in Capricorn, we're doing emotional labor. We're really focusing on like kind of getting through things emotionally, or where we need to take responsibility or kind of mature. And the moon is kind of featuring, Saturn here, which is direct. So we're going to be able to get a lot of work done, I think, Monday into Tuesday with some of the sextiles to Saturn. So you might feel like those are going to be better working days. But besides that, the only other aspect that's going to be happening on Monday is we are going to see Venus in Capricorn in a trine with Uranus. So Venus in Capricorn is much more about long-term love and relationship goals, legacy of what you're building with another person, maturity when it comes to relationships or money or personal style. And it is at a 24, okay? So it can be things that are more kind of sensitive in nature, or it can be about our intuition when it comes to relationships, or when it comes to style, or when it comes to money. And Uranus trine Venus basically means that there can be some unusual, unexpected, fortuitous changes happening with relationships, values, money, people that we kind of relate to or we partner with. So changes in love and money can happen on a dime, but Jupiter is associated with the trine. So it means that there can be some, kind of extreme, abundant or lucky situations or circumstances for some people. It depends on the placements, but 24 is generally something we don't see coming, and that kind of happens out of the blue. So we could see a nice little pop happening for some people with their investments. We could see people who are just, unexpectedly meeting people, connecting with people, falling in love with people, effortlessly making style changes or making changes in terms of their personal preferences, their job, their money. So generally this is a positive aspect. I don't see it necessarily being bad. It just might be something that, kind of comes out of left field. And then that is going to take us into Tuesday, which is going to be the 3rd. And on the 3rd, when we wake up, the moon is still in Capricorn, and the moon overnight has gone through a square to the north and the south node. So it is possible, like Monday into Tuesday, there are some significant events happening with the moon square the nodes that is involving Capricorn things. So changing of circumstances in the Capricorn area of your life, changes with work, changes with leadership or bosses, or changes, I think, out in the world with leadership, or even with government situations. And we may be waking up to that basically on the 3rd. So on the 3rd, there's not really much happening. I feel like this is a day where there is the least amount of action kind of going on in the skies. And this is going to be when the moon is going through Capricorn, and you'll see the moon sextile Saturn, which basically means we can get work done by releasing and letting things go, by vibing out and being focused on our vision. I feel like the sextile to Saturn in Pisces is saying there's a lot more about being okay, to become productive or become efficient, what do we have to get rid of, or what do we have to dissolve, or what do we have to release? So, for you, it might just mean that this is a day on Tuesday where taking a walk at lunch, having a nap, meditating, listening to music, something that's going to kind of help kind of get into the zone so we can feel like we can be more productive. And this is a very much less is more kind of aspect when the moon sextiles Saturn. So it's about not complicating things, making things simplified, and kind of getting the job done and being kind of in flow. So that's working well together, that aspect that the moon is going to be making with Saturn. Now in the background, you're going to feel on the 3rd, the sun is starting to come into a square with Saturn. Okay. So being that the moon is reflecting Saturn, yes, emotionally, we're feeling kind of at peace with maybe, kind of letting something go or working kind of independently. But the sun coming into the square with Saturn may be felt today, where we feel like there are some delays, some setbacks, and some things that are being limited. This will happen at a 12. This sextile is happening at a 12. And 12 degrees are degrees that are associated with Pisces. Okay, so 12 and 24 is always Pisces. I'm going to pull out my handy dandy, my number book, basically for you guys, the degree theory. And 12s, I find this has the longest list of all of them. So 12s can deal with things disappearing, or something or someone that disappears, or things that we lose, or things that are kind of secret or unexplored. Fears, phobias, diseases, hospitals, things that are invisible, medications, pharmacy, isolated places, monasteries, religious nature, hotels, management, things at night, errors, abysses, oil, gas, gasoline, drug dealers, photographers, counterfeit, things that are false or insincere, vague, foggy, or obscure, research, doctorate degrees, things by the sea or by the ocean, stuff involving drowning, poisoning, godparents, or running away. Okay, so I know that's a laundry list of things, but 12 is going to add this kind of Pisces, this hidden element to things. And so I look at, okay, Sun in Sagittarius, legal cases, for example, revolving around, you know, where there has been some lack of transparency or lack of responsibility or lack of appropriate oversight, right, of things. And the Sun Mercury coming into a square with Saturn is basically trying to force Saturn to take responsibility, or it's trying to, in a legal way or in a global way, shed light on something, okay? And so 12s can be about things that have happened involving, you know, pharmaceuticals, quite literally 12 degrees, especially internationally. So a lot of this isn't just national, it's international. So you're going to be hearing things that are like coming out in other countries. For example, this is news that you're not going to hear on the mainstream news, but this is happening. Australia in the last week had I think it was a doctor come out and be addressing, I think some of their politicians, talking about some of the effects and the disclosure of information revolving around vaccines and their findings and information of stuff that was not disclosed. Okay, that's quite literally the 12 squaring, you know, Saturn at a 12. You're going to be also hearing more revolving around secret meetings of people from around the world and people who are, you know, in world positions of like leadership. We're seeing that in this last week, where there was news coming out about Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau coming to the United States, meeting with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. That's happening. They're having secret meetings, okay? So it's taking place. In this last week, hearing news revolving around Bill Gates being called out by government officials in Japan, saying that he can't travel there, otherwise they're going to be arresting him, right, for crimes against humanity. This is all factual information. You can go and find this. This is all real. And it's now just starting to kind of trickle into the media, but this is an implication, I think, of the Mercury retrograde squaring Saturn, where the information is getting out, but you're hearing it from various other international news outlets. As an American, I can tell you one of the most eye-opening things that I've experienced over the last couple of years is looking at international news, zooming out, not being so focused just with what's going on in my country, but seeing what's happening around the world, and that there are still some news and media outlets and also a lot more independent media and journalists out there that are trying to get the truth out. And Sagittarius is about the truth. So with Mercury going retrograde in Sag, it's about people trying to receive this information. It's finding its way onto other kind of platforms or even like media. Social media could be Jupiter and Gemini. And the squares to Saturn is basically holding Saturn accountable for all of the shit that has been hidden and kept from the public. Once Neptune goes direct this week, both Saturn and Neptune are direct. And they are full steam ahead until the spring going into the summer of 2025, where both of them are going to go into Aries. Spring of 25 is going to be the period of disclosure in a lot of ways. I don't think it's just about pharmaceutical and medications and stuff revolving around global health. I think it's also going to be disclosure revolving issues connecting to the film industry, organized religion. I also think it's going to be connected very much to secret societies. I think it's also going to be more about health regulations and connections to the pandemic and what happened with hospitals. I think we're also going to have like this grand reveal that's going to happen, where a lot of people are going to realize that there's a lot of things that we've been lied to about. And so, you know, conspiracies is very much like Neptune and Pisces, you know, so I think there's going to be a lot of conspiracies that we're going to realize that had a little bit more truth to it than we gave credit for. And it's going to all start to kind of come out. So part of what's happening right now is the publishing of this, the data and the information of this, the studies coming out, the professors, the professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, people who are basically bringing this information to light, so that way a lot of this stuff can actually become more so revealed and like readily available and known by the masses, which is going to be taking place next spring. So there's a lot going on right now this month, where I think that they have to go through the legal kind of obstacle course or like legwork to be able to kind of get some of this stuff out in the open. So this is starting to happen with some of these retrogrades right now. But essentially, yeah, I mean, you know, the 3rd is going to be the day that it's going to be the most chill. Like nothing's really happening this day. So if you're looking for a day where you're like, okay, where can I coast? Where can I still get some work done? but not have as much kind of blowing back at me. I think the 3rd would be the day. The only thing you're going to see is in the PM hours, the moon is going to start coming into a square with Chiron, which could bring some emotional sensitivity, but it's going to kind of ease up a little bit. So, that'll happen overnight. So for a lot of us, you're going to miss that transit, which may be bringing up kind of conflict between work responsibilities and our own personal needs. Now, this is going to take us into the 4th, okay? And the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, these days there's a lot of stuff happening. Earlier in the evening, I guess I should have mentioned this on the, is it the 3rd? What day was it? Mars. Oh no, Mars hasn't gone direct yet. Okay, I'm thinking Mars is already retrograde. I'm like, all right, let me go back to the 3rd. So we're going to go into the 3rd, going into the 4th. Okay, so from the 4th through like the 7th, this is when you guys are going to see a lot of stuff happening at one time. So just bear with me. All right, so we start on the 4th, okay, and this is going to be with the moon still in Capricorn. Now the moon's going to come in conjunction with Venus, which I like, even though Venus is in a Saturn-based sign. Moon, Venus in Capricorn is really great for networking, connecting with bosses, getting work done, connecting with clients, feeling the love in a really strong, kind of committed, traditional way. And Moon-Venus aspects make us feel more lovable. It brings the sweetness, it brings affection, it brings opportunities for relationship. So I like this aspect, especially if you have any planets that might be in like the later degrees of Capricorn or the earth signs. You guys are going to love this the most. And that Moon-Venus conjunction is also trining Uranus. So this is saying sudden changes when it comes to money, resources, jobs, networking opportunities, that kind of stuff will be happening on the 4th. That's a nice aspect. And I wanted to start with the sweet stuff before I get into the salty. So the salty stuff is that we are going to see Mercury retrograde in opposition to Jupiter. This is the 2nd time we've seen this. So if you guys saw my Mercury retrograde video, I talk about how Mercury will oppose Jupiter 3 times. It will square Saturn 3 times, and they're going to be kind of back to back. So Mercury retrograde at a 16. So this is a Cancer degree. So this is a degree that, deals with home, family, homeland, the past, emotions, family, is opposing Jupiter. So this means that communication, ideas, learning, traveling feels like larger than life, right? Like there's bigger situations that are kind of unfolding. Jupiter deals with laws. Jupiter also deals with abundance. Jupiter deals with knowledge. It deals with travel. And Mercury does too, but it's more like locally and things revolving around like communication and short distance trips and business. So tall tales are generally told when we see a Mercury-Jupiter opposition, especially when we see them in their fall, and we also see them retrograde. So there's a couple things working against them that, like I said, mutual reception is generally a good thing. Like it's something beneficial when you see, 2 planets in each other's kind of ruling signs. But when you've got double negatives like a fall, an opposition, and a retrograde, it tells me that there's some big news coming up, or there's some big change or change in direction, or an event that's going to be happening that's going to throw everybody off. And it might be some shocking news that we don't see coming. Now, on top of that, we are also going to see on the 4th that then the sun in Sagittarius is now coming into a square with Saturn, which is generally a day where we hear, oh, there's been a delay or a setback, or, it's not a no, it's just not now, or not yet. And Sun in Sagittarius can be kind of highlighting themes revolving around international travel, airplanes, communications. It can also be about education, higher education, like college, universities, or professors. And the Sun square Saturn, can mean that there is some harsh conditions, or people can be more critical. It can mean that we feel like delayed or thwarted in some way of like wanting to get our stuff done. And these are signs also. Sagittarius deals more with our faith and our belief system and our philosophy. Pisces deals more with like education. It can deal more with, those who are in need. I literally think that Sun square Saturn is going to be talking about, more themes revolving around a change in direction with immigration matters. And that has been happening already with the retrograde. We are already seeing stuff like, you know, Trump making threats of tariffs against Mexico. Mexico, you know, their prime minister coming forward and being like, yeah, we want to help you guys with trying to keep people from crossing the border. We want to actually, you know, try to thwart people from going. And that conversation, you know, could quite literally be somebody kind of giving somebody an ultimatum, you know, and then it's somehow impacting immigration. So we may hear more about this and how it's happening in other countries. I don't think it's limited to just America. We can also hear more news revolving around airplanes. Unfortunately, I had that prediction for you guys, I think it was like a week ago, where I was like, you're going to hear some major things with an airplane. And several people commented about the airplane crash that happened. I think, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was in Europe. I don't remember exactly where it was. And it's really unfortunate. And this might be more about investigations into said crash. I think that we may hear stuff revolving around proceedings involving like Boeing. It could be about like lack of, you know, responsibility or transparency, or, you know, things not appropriately being maintained or watched. And also, you know, some people are going to think that this is like, you know, really controversial, but I think this might be more about like DEI stuff, and where we're starting to see in some hospitals, Saturn and Pisces, or in some positions where, you know, people are managing, or where there's supposed to be some kind of managed care, or it could even be things involving, you know, like airplanes and like travel, where we have seen some companies that have been implementing DEI, but we are also seeing that there is some major issues with you know, the job getting done and getting done appropriately, you know, because some companies are prioritizing, because they're being pressed to prioritize equality, which equality is a good thing. But when you're saying you have to have X amount of certain ethnicities, or X amount of certain genders, or X amount of certain people who identify a certain way, and we're hiring people based off of their demographics, not based off of their actual experience and the time on the job and like their education, you know, and we're starting to see breakdown or failure happening as a result of, you know, performance, or even like management, right? That's generally what we see. A retrograde is a breakdown. So we're going to be hearing more about some of this stuff, and like whether or not these systems are actually working, or if they need to be reworked or reconsidered in some way. I mean, that's literally the astrology at play. So I'm wondering if they're going to tie incidents involving accidents or crashes or other things to some of this stuff, which is an international thing. This is not something that's just happening in America. It's being implemented internationally for companies to try to push along agendas to, you know, get the world on board with certain movements. And in retrospect, it sounds great to have more equality, but it's being presented as something that's going to be equality, when in reality it's really trying to course and kind of merge everybody into like one camp. And companies are being financially either rewarded or they are being basically persecuted as to whether or not they're going along with this agenda. So they're being rewarded. And generally you'll see these companies. These are companies that are, you know, really pushing certain agendas out in the world, and they're being financially rewarded or compensated, or they're being given, you know, money or loans for their businesses, versus companies who won't go along with it, who are generally either more self-sufficient, or they're intentionally going against the agenda, and may potentially have that impact their ability to fund themselves. And also it may significantly impact, you know, their ability to be able to provide services on the world stage. Some companies may even face, you know, like fines or fees for not participating or for following the agenda. And also they may potentially be debanked. So when you think about this, and for me, it's becoming more easily and readily available to see who these companies are. So the more that you kind of start learning and you start watching like their commercials, and you start kind of seeing like their campaigns and their agendas, you know, you're starting to see who I think is kind of falling in line with this stuff and who's not. So you guys will have to let me know if you've seen some of these commercials and things already, if you know what I'm kind of talking about. All right, so we're going to see the Sun square Saturn. So we feel that delay. We feel that like harshness. We are then going to see Venus start coming into a sextile with Neptune, which is sensitive, social, compassionate, emotional, understanding, you know, willing to make sacrifices for the right people at the right time. And then in the late PM hour, you will see the moon go into Aquarius. And then if I didn't say this, I also, the Mercury opposed Jupiter. So big ideas, Sun square Saturn, the slowdown. Man, there's a lot of stuff happening on one day. And it's jammed into a couple days. You guys are going to see this. So moon's going to cross Venus. That's going to happen in the PM hours. It's going to trine Uranus so we can make changes. And then the moon's going to go into Aquarius late in the PM hours on the 4th, and it will conjunct Pluto. So a major emotional change, transformation, purification, purge. But what's nice is that Venus is still in a trine with Uranus. So whatever changes are happening, yes, it impacts jobs, it impacts, money, resources, and the planet, but it may not be as gnarly, seeing that Venus is a nice aspect to Uranus. And Uranus is still retrograde, by the way. All right, so this is going to take us into the 5th. And when we wake up in the morning, the moon is separating from Pluto. It might still feel a little emotionally intense, but it's separating and it's trining the south node. So through socializing, connecting, focusing on the future, being with friends, we're able to karmically kind of come together and clear something, relationship karma or anything revolving around self-undoing, the past even. And we've also got the moon that is going to be growing into a trine with Jupiter, although I think that may not happen until the 6th. And we're going to see the moon oppose Mars. I want you guys to pay attention on the 5th to the moon in opposition to Mars, because moon Pluto is about emotional purger and transformation and intensity. And then watching the moon in opposition to Mars, it means that there can be some pressure from outside of ourselves, or there can be some combativeness, or there can be some conflict maybe that can kind of pop up. It's also squaring Lilith, so I could definitely see that happening. But that would be early in the morning on the 5th. We will see after the moon in opposition to Mars. So most of that's happening in the early morning. So that's over by noon. And then we're going to see the Mercury Cazimi. So many things happening. All right, so Mercury Cazimi. This is the halfway point through the Mercury retrograde. So if you guys have been following along with my channel, I talked about how Mercury going retrograde in Sag is having us all reevaluate and rethink about the bigger picture. We're getting a little stifled between Jupiter and Saturn. It's kind of expansion and contraction at the same time. This is the halfway point through the Mercury retrograde. So if you don't know what the Mercury retrograde is about, you're going to kind of figure it out here's the solution, or here's the conversation I need to have, or this is what I need to do. So the Cazimi is considered fortuitous in a sense where Mercury is relaying a message to the king, right? That's the sun. And Mercury is dying in the heart of the sun. So this is a purification period that's okay, if there have been some things that have been chaotic, now you have the Cazimi where there's the breakthrough. And honestly, with the Cazimi ruled by Jupiter in opposition to Jupiter and in a square to Saturn, some people may realize hold on a second, pump the brakes. We can't make a decision right now. There's too many changing circumstances. Let's just see what happens. Let's just let it play out. For some of us, we might decide, yes, we're going to go big or go home. And for others, we're going to be actually, now is not the time. And I'm not gonna, take any risks right now. Mercury square Saturn also, which is coming back again, you're gonna see that in the next day, is a, limitation or a breakdown in communication. Very similar to the Sun square Saturn. Sun square Saturn means we feel, our ego feels blocked. Mercury square Saturn means they're not answering the phone, they won't respond to the email, we can't track the package, that kind of stuff is gonna happen. And then it's all gonna get blown out and feel bigger because of the opposition to Jupiter. So this is extremely dense astrology talk right now. So those of you guys who are trying to follow along, it's confusing even for me to explain it to you, but I kind of see this as a rubber band that's being pulled, and it's okay, when are we gonna let go? When are we gonna let go? When are we gonna let go? And if we don't let go, the band is gonna snap and it's gonna be pretty dramatic. And then if we let go too early, it's not gonna go very far, right? So any which way you slice it, really the action is no action. It's reevaluation, waiting until the dust settles. And likely this will materialize as either some extreme weather or some really crazy news. That's kind of the feeling that I get. The Cazimi is at a 14. So 14s deal with banking, wallets, money, food, resources, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's down here. Jupiter's also the dispositor of Saturn. So likely we start hearing that there's some financial rumblings, I think, in the world. 14, so let me read to you guys 14. But I know that's banking, wallets, that kind of stuff generally. Food, the planet. Okay, so 2, 14, and 26 are always Taurus degrees. So money, wallet, banks, employees, the economy, bankers, villages, estates, farmers, food, things we eat, kitchens, stuff that's fat or greasy, nature, forest, throat, neck, vocal cords, things that we grow, things that we possess, the color green, and opera or singers, okay? So are we going to have some big news about, the economy? Yes, I think so, especially knowing that that second Jupiter square Saturn is coming in, and we saw that materialize in August of this year as a significant kind of turning point with the market, and it was not a positive turn. So perhaps news is getting ready to break, or it's getting ready to come out that, it's not so positive for the banks. On top of that, after we see the Cazimi, then we're going to see the sun start coming out of the square with Saturn and start coming into an opposition with Jupiter. So the 4th, 5th, and 6th is really when this is all kind of like happening. Let's read the Sabian symbol. So the Sabian symbol would be 15 degrees because we round up. And it's the Cazimi is going to take place on the 5th. So you guys are going to want to pay attention to like those messages from the universe, your intuition. If something pops up, something kind of comes through. All right. So Sagittarius 15, the groundhog looking for its shadow. I was reading this earlier. Does anybody know when they do that? Like when they pull the groundhog out and have him look for a shadow? And it obviously, those of you guys don't know, it's whether or not the groundhog sees his shadow, and that tells you like how long winter is going to go, if it's going to be a long winter or not. So do you guys know when that happens? I should have Googled that, but I don't know. Okay, so the theme is checking things out. The symbol speaks to intuition, a keen sensitivity to signatures and the sign of change, and highly developed investigative skills. The image of the groundhog looking for a shadow alludes to practical testing of the waters or sampling of the conditions in order to determine whether or how to proceed. Implicit in this symbol is an attempt to divine further or discern predictable patterns. The emphasis here is on flexibility and the willingness to make whatever changes is required to accomplish objectives. At its highest, it represents a natural gift for knowing how to handle difficult, challenging situations. Watch for uncertainty and lack of self-confidence. The accent is on an investigation. It would be wise to play it safe and check things out before you decide what to do. Knowing what you don't know is key to your survival. Greatest advantage lies in being willing to adapt and find the advantage in the situation at hand. Guard against being a scaredy cat or letting yourself get ruled by fear. Don't let life on the run isn't fun. Okay, so stepping stones is curiosity, inquisitiveness, investigation, apprehension, concern, interest, self-protection, tentativeness, sensitivity to cues, and prediction. Mercury is notorious for being like people who are involved in analysis, okay? So analysis of law in Sagittarius, analysis of weather, analysis of banking and finance. Like you're gonna hear something's gonna happen in this week where somebody's gonna come out and they're gonna be like, this is what's coming. And people might be like, oh yeah, whatever, like, they're just saying that, or it's like the person who cries wolf and they're always kind of saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And like, obviously at some point, the inevitable can happen, but somebody may come out and make a statement or a prediction that goes against the narrative of what most financial, people are saying, or people who are, assessing the data and the information, and whether or not there is a significant change in the pattern, right? Mercury is about pattern recognition of finances. And I thought for some time that, the Mercury retrograde in opposition to Jupiter was going to be people making things sound much better than it really is. But the reality of the situation is, to me, this is like not wanting to release that information prior to a major change of, administration. I'm of the mind that it really would not have mattered who became the next president, like the kind of pressing financial situation that we've been experiencing over like the last like several years of like printing money. It was just inevitable that we were going to see inflation rise, and now we're really going to start to see issues happening, and how that's kind of impacting international trade even. Anyway, so that might be like some kind of topic that kind of gets hit in this particular period. We might see some significant or substantial price increases, especially pertaining to education and travel. So like college expenses, things revolving around buying planes, going places, stuff like that. Great example, actually, this last week, Mercury retrograde and Jupiter square Saturn. Jupiter is big and Gemini represents transportation. And so I think there's like 7 or 8 states that just now, I believe, banned the ability to purchase an RV in like 7 or 8 states. And I think it's like Maine, New York, Illinois, I think it's California, Oregon. But there's a whole list of them. And that's quite literally the Jupiter square Saturn. You know, it's like there's a limit to what you can actually possess and larger, you know, transportation. This time around with like the Mercury retrograde and the opposition, I think we're going to start hearing more about incentive to limit air travel. And it could be for environmental reasons. It could be that there's major price increases. So people are going to be like, I can't afford that. And you might hear more about the law and the legality. Supposedly also there's been some legal stuff going on with some of the airlines revolving around overcharging customers and things like that. And now that's kind of getting sorted and settled out as well. So that might be part of it also. Anyway, so watch for the big news, which is big. And I would say be careful with whose advice you buy, because Mercury is retrograde. And also we have some planets that are still kind of square to Saturn. So that means that, you know, we don't quite have the full story yet. All right. So then we're going to see the day continue. And that's pretty much the last aspect we have on the 5th. We're going to wake up in the morning and the moon's in Aquarius. So we're still looking at Uranus, which is still retrograde. Now the moon is sextiling the sun and Mercury, so we can kind of get some stuff done. And we are going to see the moon coming into a square with Uranus, which will be later in the day. And this is where we see now Mercury square Saturn. So this is the second time we've seen this aspect in like the last month. Mercury about business negotiations, contracts, communication, signing, you know, planning things, squaring Saturn. So there are some delays or breakdown in communication or ideas. We're still working through something. And then we are going to see Venus enter Aquarius. Okay, so Venus will go into Aquarius later in the day. Going into the next morning, actually. Oops, sorry guys. Let me close that. Total Mercury retrograde moment. There we go. There we go. All right, so we're going to see where was I? Yeah, Venus goes into Aquarius. Go back here. There we go. So the moon will square Uranus on the 6th in the PM hours. Just watch for like emotional disturbances, issues with, you know, friends and money. Moon in Aquarius is very much about socializing, and this can be about how people are responding to some dramatic changes or shifts going on with banking resources and funding. Let's see what else. And that's at a 24. So we're seeing more of those Pisces degrees. It's like things we didn't see coming, expenses we didn't see coming. And on the 6th, we are also going to see Mars turn retrograde in Leo. So for those of you guys who are my Aries, Leos, and Scorpio risings, now Mars is retrograde. It will be retrograde until about, I think, like mid-February of 2025. Basically, this is like taking the planet that deals with speed, action, passion, desire, conflict, war, you know, vitality, and it's turning retrograde. So it's going to lose momentum. It's going to slow down. So this is where I said all month long, you're kind of reflecting on more of what's going on in the Leo area of your chart. The positive is that, you know, in the retrograde, it's trine the North Node. So it's saying like, you know, we can become more fierce, independent, brave, the more that we're kind of tapping into our inner warrior, our inner creative, our inner child, our inner romance, you know, and something that's about going back and reviving something that could bring us more joy or more creativity. The challenge is that Mars is opposition to Pluto. So there's this great amount of pressure that we saw at the beginning of November. There's going to be a great amount of pressure that's also going to come back in now at the end of December, early January, when Mars opposes Pluto for the second time. And then we'll see that actually in April when we have the third and final opposition. So yeah, there is like a slowing down here. And at this point, look at how many planets are retrograde, right? Pretty much everything except for the sun, which does not go retrograde, Venus and Saturn, everything else is retrograde. Neptune's about to wake up. This means that everything is slowing down. We are reflecting, reviewing, rethinking, reworking. It's not really a time of like external action. And even with the planets that are direct, you know, the Sun and Saturn, and Sun doesn't go retrograde, but still, you know, they're squaring each other. So it's saying like we're not supposed to be taking forward action right now. All right, so then you're gonna see these square complete in the PM hours. This is now gonna go into the 7th. So this is gonna be Saturday. And when we wake up on Saturday, the moon's in Pisces, so it's a different vibe. Emotionally, a little bit more behind the scenes, relaxing, privacy, being a little bit more sensitive, emotional, compassionate. And we are now starting to see the moon come into a conjunction with Saturn over like Saturday and Sunday. We will see Venus conjunct Pluto, which, I mean, that happens once a year. It's not necessarily the biggest thing in the world, but I think that it is activating that opposition to Mars. And so when you think about Mars in opposition to Pluto, some friction, right, that's going on, you know, some intensity, some fierceness, some power and control issues, you know, maybe feeling a little threatened or pressured or bullied in some way. And this could be, you know, Leo can be about in your romantic relationships, when it comes to the stock market, when it comes to gambling, when it comes to a relationship with your children, or, you know, like I said, some kind of casual relationship romantically, versus, you know, Pluto and Aquarius, right? So this could be more about collective changes, what's happening with your friends, what's happening with your community. For me personally, the way that I have kind of decided to approach the Mars in opposition to, you know, Pluto while it's retrograde is kind of like, you know, focusing more on what's going to make me happy. Focusing more on my hobbies, like my joys, things I can get back into or return to, where when the world feels the next couple of months a little intense, now that Pluto's in Aquarius, or collectively people are going through some things, it's like, okay, what can I go and focus on so I'm not getting consumed by that energy? And I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. Obviously, you know, Mars and Pluto are going to be in different parts of your chart, but you'll be kind of dealing with that back and forth tension between now and like April. Venus conjunct Pluto is, you know, a day or two, a period where there's some intensity in love. It can be about relationships. Obviously, Uranus is the dispositor here and it's retrograde, so it can be about what's breaking down, what's changing, what's shifting with our finances or our relationships. There can be obsession, you know, toxic things kind of going on in love, some rebirth opportunities in relationships as well. But Ceres is there as well, and I've been looking at that, and I feel like that adds a different flavor, where it's kind of saying like collectively, and Pluto is a collective planet, but collectively Aquarius, people are, you know, kind of going through some major grief. Ceres can be about grief, it could be about loss, in regards to love and money, right? Venus, or in regards to relationships. This could be a lot of people who are feeling very socially out of place, or they're like, I don't know, I'm grieving the loss of family members or friends. And that could be literally or figuratively, you know, not feeling like you have that support. And while that's coming into conjunction, it's also trining the South Node. So it's amplifying that feeling of just who we've lost. You know, I was talking to my husband about it the other day. I think it came from like a Joe Rogan stand-up where he said like, oh, we lost a lot of good people to COVID. You know, and then he was like, and a lot of them are still alive. And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, especially like in Aquarius, I'm like, you know, feeling that, just like the feeling of like loss of certain friendships, certain relationships, and not necessarily because of difference of opinions. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about, but, you know, people who have become really weird since the pandemic, like socially weird, people who are like, I don't want to get on a plane, you know, I don't want to leave my house, I don't feel comfortable, you know, being in public, I don't like being in large spaces, like the impact that has had on some people, and then the grief and the loss of not feeling that sense of connection to other people anymore, and like people changing. And so I look at like the Ceres conjunction with Venus and Pluto as like a time where it's like, yeah, possibly on the 6th, 7th, and 8th, that can be a time where there is this sense of you grieving, having to release or let go of someone or something. And the trines to the South Node amplify that. So it is allowing you to be able to kind of release that. The challenge is that, you know, on the 7th, when the moon's going through Pisces, we're more sensitive, we're more empathic than usual. We need a little bit more private time, we need more rest. Pisces can bring up some bad habits emotionally and in terms of what we're eating, drinking, consuming, you know, smoking, whatever. And you want to watch for that because that can be something that can kind of come up. People are a lot more emotionally sensitive, I think, with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces in general. But then when the moon shows up here, it's like a 24 to 48 hour period where collectively we're also all kind of feeling it. We will then see Neptune turn direct. Okay, so it will go direct on the 7th. We will see the sun come into an opposition with Jupiter, where, you know, in general, all things considered, the sun opposed Jupiter day is actually pretty positive. It's kind of like anything is possible. I can get out there, and if I can, you know, dream it, I can do it. And Sagittarius is more about kind of the bigger picture, and Gemini is just like, that's great, but like, where's the map? Where are the directions? How do we get there? Like, you know, there is like a sense of trying to like work out all of like the information and the data. And the truth is like, you know, the moon conjunct Saturn and the moon being in Pisces really squashes the positivity of this, as much as I hate to say that, as does the Mercury retrograde. And once again, this is at a 16. So this is about home, family, things that are going on in our home countries, decisions that I think are being made about leadership, rules, traveling. And it's coming into a square with the moon, and the moon and Saturn are kind of hovering around. So we have big plans and ideas, and we think we're doing things, but we're actually starting to realize, actually, hold on, there's a shift in circumstances, right? That's the mutable squares. There's a change of schedule. There's a change of our emotions. There's a change with weather. I would say with the moon coming into conjunction with Saturn, okay, so that's kind of in the PM hours, going to be overnight, and the square to Mercury, Saturday is not a good day for traveling. Saturday is not a good day for communication. Saturday is not a good day to be booking flights or planning anything. Something is changing, and we got to wait until this stuff kind of settles out. Now, the moon will make the last aspect, which will be the square to Mercury and the conjunction to Saturn, which makes me feel like I would not want to be traveling or being on the road on Saturday night. I would be trying to get somewhere, ride out a storm, kind of keeping to myself, resting, waiting until some of this stuff blows over. And then we wake up on the 8th, and the moon is still in Pisces, but now the moon is going to be in between Saturn, which limits, and Neptune, which is kind of like creating some confusion or emotional confusion, or we need to be isolated. And now it's squaring the sun. So this is the first quarter square. So this is definitely a change in circumstances that we do not see coming because the moon's kind of besieged between Saturn and Neptune. So it's kind of trapped. And then we also see the moon come into a square with Jupiter. Something the 7th and the 8th in the world is going to be happening. That's going to make people go like, oh my God, am I going home for Christmas? You know, like, what's going to happen? Like, what's going on? Like, is this real? And it's been so bizarre because a lot of like the Pisces stuff has actually been a lot more about like, we've seen all these weird drones that have been hovering places. Like the last week we saw like all these lights above the lighthouse, where people are like, or the White House, people being like, oh my God, like, is there aliens in DC? We heard that big disclosure conversation about the government, where the government's like, yeah, aliens are real. They live in the ocean, you know. And that's very much like Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces. You know, other things beneath the sea are far out there in space, and other dimensions and things that we cannot see, and how now there's going to be more disclosure about that stuff. Call me crazy, but I've been thinking about this, looking at the astrology for like the last couple of months. And I feel like 2024 is a year that's more about disclosure, where there's going to be much more disclosure about aliens. Whether you believe in them or not, that's neither here nor there, but there's going to be more talking about this, especially when it comes to like government officials, Saturn. And then in 2025, we will see Saturn and Neptune go in and out of Aries, right? Which we have not seen together like that in hundreds, if not thousands of years. We have not experienced that in our lifetime. That's a whole other conversation. But as Saturn and Neptune go in and out of that, it's a new reality for humans, right? And it's going to go in Aries and then back into Pisces. I believe when we start seeing, Uranus and Gemini and the trines to Pluto, we will shift from disclosure to actually seeing things in the skies. You know, I can't remember who it was. I think it's Austin from the Astrology podcast who said, you know, Pluto in Aquarius will not be complete without looking up in the sky in terror. You know, and I laugh, but like there's some truth to that, because Aquarius is the sky, it's the atmosphere. So 2025, I think, is going to be the year that, yeah, I think we are going to see stuff. I think, you know, some people will be like, it's aliens, and other people are going to be like, it's Project Bluebeam, duh. You know, there's stuff being projected, and there's stuff that is being kind of shown into our atmosphere that's not real. And I think that, yeah, they're gonna normalize aliens, as crazy as it sounds, and things that we're seeing in the sky. So part of even the retrograde now and some of the squares is like the slow trickle of releasing some of this information in preparation for that to become a new reality. Why? You'll have to go down the rabbit hole and do some research. I think a lot of it is that the whole agenda, it doesn't matter if it's a pandemic, it doesn't matter if it's a war, it doesn't matter if it's potential economic collapse or if it's aliens, everything feeds off of fear. So really it's going to be about how much energy you're giving towards that. If you're buying into that, if you believe in that, if you're going to subscribe to that, if that's going to be another reason why you're not going to get on a plane or go outside or do things, you know? And I'm sure a lot of you guys are listening to this and you're like, this is fucking crazy. But trust me when I tell you, save this video. Next year, a lot of this stuff is going to happen and you're going to be like, this is crazy. Like, is this real? Reality is definitely going to be tested, I think, with Saturn and Neptune. I feel like I would keep my plans very light next Sunday. Really next, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but Sunday, most of you guys work. So Sunday is a day that I would have zero plans, expectations. You want to go with the flow, right? Saturn and the moon and Neptune in Pisces. So this is like, have your snacks, have some downtime, time to relax and unwind, to meditate, you know, maybe take a bath, maybe plan a spa day, go and get a mani-pedi with your kids, you know, or do it at home, something like that. Because there's going to be a lot of things changing circumstances, and people are going to be a little mentally stressed with some of the back and forth. And I would say be very cautious with the moon going into Pisces next Sunday, conjunct Saturn and Neptune, because you could be like, I'm stressed out, I'm drinking, I'm not leaving the house, you know, I'm drugging. Like, we don't want to do that stuff. We don't want to do that stuff. Sun conjunct Saturn is Sun square Saturn is saying that we cannot escape some of this stuff. We can't emotionally escape. And this is about finding ways to be optimistic about rising to the occasion and overcoming some of the challenges. Now, Neptune is now direct. We have also got the moon. Really, the only positive aspect the moon is making is it's making a sextile to Uranus, which is basically saying if we can kind of emotionally get grounded, release and let go, and eat well and take care of our body and maybe ground ourselves out, we can kind of stabilize. So working with earth can be helpful too. Gardening, cooking, you know, working with plants, working with herbs, crystals, that kind of stuff can help stabilize as well. And know that this is that first quarter square. So it's not just, you know, the sun and the moon squaring where it's like, okay, now we're reconciling with some of the new moon stuff, where this is where if you did have some really big intentions that you were setting for a new moon in Sagittarius, you're going to have a record scratch moment. You're going to be like, oh shit, maybe I'm not going to be able to get all that stuff done this month, you know, or maybe I do need to go back to the drawing board. But the opposition to Jupiter, the square to Saturn, the Mercury square Saturn that's brewing, it's all there, you know, it's all there. It's saying we literally are going to feel like we're in a fishbowl and we can't make a decision. So take a breath. Don't have anything serious planned, I guess I would say, around next weekend. Take your time and know that Saturn is the focal point, you know, of these squares. And it's basically saying, if you're in doubt, sleep on it, pray about it, ask for guidance, get a reading, you know, meditate. Sometimes no action is the best reaction until we let the dust settle and have a better understanding of where we're going. And so, yes, this week, the first immediate week of December is quite active. I can't remember the last time that we saw so many aspects happening in one week outside of the moon. There's a lot. All right. So just take a breath. Outside of this week, when we kind of zoom out and we look at the month in general, something that you guys want to know is that obviously the Venus transit that's taking place at the beginning of the month, we are going to see Venus leave Capricorn and go into Aquarius. All right. So Aquarius is social. It's about community. It's about the future. It's different. It needs freedom. It can be about humanitarianism. It's great for parties, gatherings, and get-togethers. And being involved with other people in some kind of social or kind of celebratory things that you can do where coming together with others can be very fun. All right, so we're going to see that. We are also going to see the sun mid-month, you know, around the 21st, come into Capricorn. So it'll be leaving Sagittarius, where there's been a lot of action with our belief system, where we're traveling, what we're learning, and what's growing and expanding, to, you know, having, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice. So this is going to be like that resetting point that's going to happen. Sun in Capricorn is having us focus more on our long-term goals, about our career, responsibility, and all of that fun stuff. So there's definitely a lot of kind of like getting some stuff worked on and completed before we kind of get into the new year, the calendar new year. We are going to see Neptune go direct on the 7th. So that'll be happening this week. And like I said, it's going to take a couple of days to about a week for Neptune to wake up, but it's still in the late degrees of Pisces. So collectively starting to become aware, starting to become more clear, less confused, less lethargic, and starting to get clarity about where we're going. And it's at a 27. So it's more about how we're thinking, how we're communicating with other people, can also be some memory related things. And then we're also going to see Mercury turn direct. So Mercury will turn direct on the 15th of December. So technically on the 15th, the Mercury retrograde is over. The only thing that you need to kind of remember is that all month long, because of the post shadow, there is still some bumpiness. So if you felt like things were bumpy in November, early November, right? Where you were like, oh my God, there's Mercury retrograde things already happening. What's going on? You're probably going to feel it on the back end. That's because throughout the retrograde, both the pre-shadow, the retrograde, and the post-shadow, Mercury is still going to be opposing Jupiter, making things feel big, and squaring Saturn, which is going to create a delay. And that's why I said to you guys, like, December is more the month of like winding down, figuring out what we're finishing up, so that way we can really start the new year kind of fresh and kind of figure out what direction we're going in. Obviously, a real pain in the ass for traveling. So I'm going to keep telling you guys, if you're traveling, put on your luggage, tags, make sure you double and triple check your guys' accommodations, make sure there actually is rental cars, or, if you're moving, right, that you actually have a moving truck, or that you have movers. There can be delays, there can be traffic delays, there can be weather delays. Take lots of time getting to where you need to go. Get to the airport a little bit earlier, leave some time, some wiggle room if you know that you're going to be needing a layover. And just be mindful of the weather reports and things like that, because I do think we're going to see some issues revolving around travel with this retrograde. And also just people really taking a little bit longer to make decisions, to agree to things, to sign things, legal contracts, applying for school, going back to school, writing, publishing, editing, putting out courses. All these things are going to take a little bit longer because the retrograde is kind of going through a sign that's associated with those particular things. We will also see, in terms of retrogrades that are beginning, we are going to see Mars turn retrograde. So we talked about that happening this week, definitely impacting my Aries and my Scorpio and my Leo risings, especially if you have anything that's going to be around, 7 to 0 degrees of Leo. That will be impacting you this month. Mars will be retrograde over that. So if it's on an angle, if it's on a planet, if it's on your sun, moon, or rising, definitely a good idea to know where it is. And consider like talking to somebody or getting a reading. I'm always here on Fridays. Every other week we do astrology readings. So if you have any of those degrees kind of hit, pop in and you can always ask me a question, and I can tell you about how that's going to be impacting you. We know that with Mars retrogrades, we've got to be really careful with like heat, blades, anything that involves cutting, lasers, cutting our hair, piercings, tattoos, that kind of stuff. And Leo is like the main. So there could also be some big changes going on with people changing their hairstyle. So I think of like cutting your hair, or, more masculine cuts, or, bleaching your hair, or, opting for something warmer. We may see more of that. And retrogrades mean that the energy is expressing itself difficultly. So, there could be some challenges in communicating or expressing our anger or our passions or desires. There can be some changing of directions with whether or not we're taking risks, and how we're dating and how we're expressing ourselves. So definitely check out that Mars retrograde video if you want more insight, or the horoscopes to see how that's impacting you. Now for the lunations this month, obviously, today we're experiencing a new moon. So that new moon is in Sagittarius, but we actually have two new moons in the month of December, and we're going to have a full moon too. So there's a lot going on with the lunations this month. You're kicking off December with a new moon that is either happening on the 30th of November or the 1st of December, depending on what time zone you're in Sag. And then we're going to have on the 15th, there's going to be a full moon in Gemini that will be taking place. And it's going to be relatively close to Jupiter. So it does feel bigger. It does feel more about communication, more about learning, more about information. And it's going to happen with Mercury getting ready to turn direct. Actually, I think it'll be just getting ready to go direct in Sagittarius in its opposite sign. So how funny that like both the new moon with the ruler being in opposition, and then the full moon with the ruler being in opposition is saying the same thing. It's like, hey, we got to pay attention to what we're learning and what we're, planning and where we're going. And both of these lunations have the ruler square Saturn. And in this case, actually, with the full moon in Gemini, you're going to see that even though the ruler is going to be kind of slightly square Saturn, you're going to see that the full moon in Gemini is actually squaring Neptune. So sensitive, emotional, there can be a sense of not seeing so clearly, not the biggest moon, but still there can be some big question marks from that. And then at the end of the month on the 30th, we're going to see that there is going to be then a new moon that's going to happen in Gemini. Not in Gemini, in Capricorn. So many moons. So we've got new moon in Sag, full moon in Gemini, new moon in Capricorn. This one, of all of the moons, is my favorite one because we don't see a lot of like the confusing like oppositions that we were seeing with the other two. We're going to see a new moon that's going to be in Capricorn, and the ruler is Saturn. And Saturn is direct, and the new moon will actually sextile Saturn. So let me show that to you. All right, so there's the full moon in Gemini. Sorry, guys, I'm all over the place. Here's the full moon in Gemini. So much information. Square Neptune, and then the ruler is in Sagittarius, but it's getting ready to go direct. It'll go direct right after this. Okay, so it's saying there's still something kind of being worked on. And then we have the new moon in Capricorn. So actually both the new moon in Sagittarius and both the new moon in Capricorn are both at a 9. So they're both about like new international, movements, more positivity, growth, what we're learning, big new things is kind of happening. And this is ruled by Saturn, and you can see it's sextile Saturn, right? So slightly squares the nodes, so it might kind of feel like it's a significant turning point for sure. It does look like we have Mercury challenging Saturn, so it can be difficult in kind of communicating and getting our point across, but it's coming out of that square, and Mercury is actually coming out of the retrograde. So things should actually get better in terms of communication the closer that we get to the beginning of the year. You guys know how I feel about the new year. The calendar new year is not really the real new year. The real new year is going to start when the sun is ingressing into Aries in March of 2025. We're going to have eclipses then. We're going to have retrogrades then. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you last year. The new year really begins in April. So really, I look at this and I'm like, okay, for the normies, we've got a new moon that's happening right around the time of New Year's Eve. So if you want to set intentions on New Year's Eve, totally fine. You can do that. I think it's more about reflecting on where you've been and thinking about more of where you want to go, because this does sextile Saturn, and it squares the north and the south node. But beyond that, just use this new moon, I think, to focus on like some of your long-term goals when it comes to career, responsibility, maturity, all that fun stuff. So you guys can obviously follow my work throughout the month. I'm here every Sunday. We talk about the astro weather for the next week, and we'll break this down. I put out the new moon videos, the full moon videos for you guys too. So I'm going to start working on this full moon in Gemini video, which is going to be coming up next. It'll be the next lunation and everything else that's in between. So I'll be trying to put together some stuff on some of the bigger transits that are coming up in 2025 for you guys. But let me know if you guys have any requests or anything like that. I'm wishing you guys obviously an amazing December and a happy holiday season and a good New Year's. I hope you guys enjoy everything that this month has to offer. Slow your roll, take your time, don't rush through anything this week, okay? Let's see what happens and what kind of comes out in the world and also in our own life before we make any big decisions or any choices. Try to be actors, not reactors to things, because we still need some of the dust to settle. We need to see like what's fact from fiction, because it's gonna be hard to tell that in this next week. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with other astrology enthusiasts. And if you guys want to support me, you can by joining my memberships, and you can make a monthly donation to the channel, making it possible for me to be a full-time content creator, to keep creating this content for you guys and helping the collective. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys back here on Tuesday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see all of you very soon. Take care.